Okay, so we're back, and it says I'm screen sharing. Here you will see we're at the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. This is a somewhat non-traditional way of approaching the topic of international institutions and NGOs that help develop and enforce norms, principles, and laws pertaining to the human rights of Indigenous peoples. But nonetheless, it's a clinic, it's experiential, so we kind of have to jump right in. One of the main goals of our charge this semester will be submitting a paper that will be used in the report that the expert mechanism is going to be drafting. Just in terms of deadlines, just so we can get that out of the way, we are looking at a submission deadline no later than March 1st, 2021, which is it's a good amount of time, and you will see very quickly that there are, or of the four main UN bodies and agencies that do this kind of work, that go out into the communities, that put out RFPs, for papers, and then use those papers to finalize reports. You will see a divergent quality and perspective in the submissions. So, so some of them are not written by lawyers, others are. There are some organizations or NGOs that are not solely focused on the rights of Indigenous peoples, but are focused on, for example, the Forest Peoples Foundation in London. They have very, very professional staff, legally trained staff, and write the kinds of reports and submissions that can be readily used for other decision-making bodies. So let's just go back here to see what it says. All right, so the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples, call for submissions. Report on self-determination under the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So that declaration is typically referred to as UNDRIP. And we will go through that declaration, which is a declaration that was presented to and passed by a majority of the members of the UN General Assembly. And the body, it's relatively new. This is the UN Expert Mechanism body that is, in this case, taking charge on essentially giving an update on what self-determination means, what are some of the issues and the problems in relation to this relatively new declaration / document. And you can see, pursuant to Human Rights Council Resolution 3325, during its intersessional meeting in 2019, the expert mechanism decided to prepare a report on self-determination under the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples of 2007, right? So it is relatively new as an international legal instrument. This will be the first substantive report post 2007 on the rights of self-determination, on the rights to self-determination. So let me just make a quick note. When you're given these types of assignments, the UN and their bodies are fastidious detail markers. They take very, very good detailed notes. And so what I just see that I want to get a copy of, and I'll do this, is the notes and maybe even the resolution copy from 2019. When I first read it, I thought, oh, they already prepared the report in 2019, and this is a follow-up. It doesn't appear to be that way. It's still in progress. And so, by the way, so these UN agencies and bodies, they're largely volunteer. They're highly qualified individuals who have other careers, and they take sort of temporary sabbaticals or temporary leaves. The support for them is limited. So unlike doing, private side litigation that are driven by court deadlines, sometimes you'll see these issues drawn out. And part of it, I think, reflects the need for consultation, participation, and also just the amount of work that's involved. So the expert seminar is another subheading. The expert mechanism accepted an invitation to hold a seminar in Treaty 6 territory on the 4th and 5th of February, 2021. So that's coming up. So I will look into that. There's a good chance that is in the province of Saskatchewan. I know it's not evident, but if you work in Canadian Indigenous law, many of the First Nations that have treaties, that are signatories to treaties, refer to their territory by the actual treaty name. And Canada, particularly, which was confederated in 1867, lacked an enormous amount of imagination in the formation of these treaties, so they were just numbered. So there you go. And so this invitation is for the purpose of informing this report. So just off the top, right, already, if I'm correct, then you can imagine that the report will have quite a significant focus on Canada and its role in supporting or not self-determination as is defined under it in regard to the Treaty 6 First Nations. So it goes on to say that there'll be a draft report that will be introduced at its annual session in roughly mid-July, and then it will be finished and presented to the Human Rights Council at its 48th session in September 2021. So I just wanted to, again, focus on a couple of the basic procedural aspects. I also should say I'm not an expert with respect to the expert mechanism. It's relatively new, and I have not made any submissions to it in the past. But it's also worth noting that it follows a very standardized format in that ultimately it has to report back to the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. And this is under the Office of the High Commissioner. You can actually see that if you just scroll up to the top. So the Human Rights Council will be holding a general session in September 21. It'll take several days to get through the agenda because a number of reporting bodies like the UN Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples will be submitting their report and speaking to it. So the call is made. It says it would, the expert mechanism would hereby like to call Indigenous peoples, states, national human rights institutions, and academics to provide contributions to this study in English, French, or Spanish in Word format to expert mechanism no later than the 1st of March, 2021. And the submissions should focus on the themes contained in the concept note. And we can go into that in a moment. If you look on the side, you'll see that there are other thematic reports that the expert mechanism has engaged. So that's kind of a lot to take in, but let me conclude by saying why this is relevant. It's relevant because the case that we're working on is initially before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Now, I will have materials and a nice lecture on this, and that'll be tomorrow once I get access. But the way strategically you advance your client's cause in this field is having to access multiple venues. And these are venues that essentially record and make international customary law. So and it also motivates the commission, the Inter-American Commission, when they know that you're taking the substance of your human rights grievances to other UN bodies. It tampons down some of the politics. So I'll be talking about that as well. I don't think the report that we will do is going to be very difficult. I know it's all new, but I think over the next 2 weeks, we will very quickly become familiar with it. And also, as I said in the previous video, part of this exercise is learning how to take massive amounts of information and breaking it down into almost like digestible components. And you think of, if you've had the opportunity in legal writing or in practice in your work, when you draft actual petitions or statements of claim, they're numbered, they're in paragraph format. So basically that's what we're going to do. We're just going to break it down. I will post the Inter-American petition that we filed. But having, said this, with actually a little bit of benefit to me in not having all of the details in front of you, it's probably better in our situation not to simply rehash the petition, but rather to focus on, I would say, human rights grievances that are so profound that the remedies and the rights are tied. They are inalienable to the human condition. And so what do I mean by that? The water situation in the Rio Yaqui Pueblos is so bad that anybody who has a basic high school level of understanding, even elementary school understanding of what's good for you and what's bad for you, could understand what the importance is vis-a-vis the water situation and the water crisis. It brings in some other levers as well that can help us before the commission, as well as creating opportunities potentially with Mexico. Okay, so that is a lot to unpack. I thank you so much for listening to that, but I'm hoping you can begin to see the beginnings of this process. And I am not expecting, we're all going to work on this together. I'm not expecting like 50 pages. These are more or less like volunteers that have to read this. So my view is, if you can say what you need to say in 15 pages, all the better. And in the weeks to come, I will reach out to some colleagues who can better inform me about the practice and the context of this situation. Okay, so that's it for now. I think that's a lot. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to post both of these. So thank you so much.